she said, okay, I'm going to pray, Daddy. And she launched into this. You're preparing them for exit. I know it's Everest. Man, get to that summit. I would give body parts to just have one of those days back.
Where should young guys be looking for other men as mentors, examples? Follow me as I follow Christ. Welcome back to the MakeReady Podcast. My name is Brian Sims, and today I get to sit down with one of my favorite people in the world, Ron Dodson. Get to talk about film, get to talk about family, marriage, children, all kinds of things. Enjoy. Ron, it's good to see you again.
Oh, it's good to see you. What I can process, because we just had a massive lunch, and most of my blood flow is in my torso area right now.
Well, and I had what was it, acetaminophen or whatever the allergy medication was earlier. So if I start looking like Jason Isaacs from White Lotus, and I'm just like, yeah, sounds great.
I saw an interview with Jason Isaacs this morning. It came across my phone that evidently he did a part as Cary Grant, and
in what?
It's some biopic. And now I can't wait to see, because Jason Isaacs is so good in everything he's in.
I will always think of The Patriot. That will always be the. He's just the classic villain. If you said, like, define a classic villain, it's going to be him in The Patriot.
But as a guy who's a little bit older, Cary Grant was Harrison Ford before there was Harrison Ford. He was just that guy who could play the hero, but was very suave and probably even more so. And now I want to see this biopic, and I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, I mean, you've been in love film for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, what's your top 10? Let's say top 5. We'd be here for a while.
Man, it's I'm a huge Coen brothers, and No Country for Old Men probably sits at number 1.
Oh, Brother?
Oh, Brother's great, but a bit of a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Sure,
I mean?
I get it.
And huge, it's a riff on the Odyssey. Mm-hmm. And I love that music. It was fantastic. I still listen to the soundtrack. But no, I would put for the Coens, number 2, probably Fargo, just because the understanding of the human condition. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched the show that's based on it. I hear it's great. But and then True Grit.
Oh man!
But
do you think it surpasses the original?
I do. Not because the original is going to always have a bigger place in the American identity, because it's John Wayne and so on, but the Coens is a better movie. Mm-hmm. It's better made. It's better acted. It's more artful. Sure. It's better lit. I don't understand the coda that they added on at the end. Where she, you get the quick view of her as an older woman and all that. But I haven't had the opportunity to tell him. Okay, so anyway, No Country for Old Men probably sits at number 1 for me. I'm going to date myself, and I'm going to make some people mad with number 2, but I'm going to stick by it. What Irvin Kershner did in The Empire Strikes Back still blows me away. And here's why. First of all, it's easily the best. It's the most atmospheric and best lit. It actually, you feel much more than the. I watch A New Hope now, and the lighting takes me out of the reality. It's a lot of real close bounce. There's nothing more than a half stop of shadow.
It's like walking through Walmart.
Again, we're kind of nerding out here, but that's I'm going to nerd out because I'm with you and
we're just talking.
You're
Speak
a
my
pro
language.
in this stuff, but the lighting throughout A New Hope takes me out of the experience a lot of times, even though the camera work is I think okay. It's kind of that Lucas documentary style is kind of what he said. So you're not going to see any smash zooms or anything like that. But Kirshner, who was a professor at USC Film School, that's how Lucas knew him. It is a movie that is the dialogue is excellent. And that's a young Lawrence Kasdan, who did the dialogue off a Lee Brackett story. And Lee Brackett was this very famous science fiction author who structured things very well. But Kasdan's dialogue is great. Kirshner's eye is fantastic. The lighting is good, but then you get certain little details, like Luke appears 3 times upside down, and each time there's a major change. That's when we have an act changeover. And normally you do an act changeover with a dissolve or a fade to black or whatever. Instead, here you do it with the actor being turned, your protagonist being turned upside down. So it's a very artful movie, even though it's this sci-fi fantasy. So it still holds a lot to me, even though it's been totally trashified now. I'm kind of looking forward to Andor, but the whole Disney has just killed it in a bad way. So that's number 1 and number 2, and I've got, I'm
keep the list going.
I'm a huge fan of movies, so I've got a long list. 2001, A Space Odyssey. That's, I think, Kubrick's finest movie. That fights for the number 1 spot as well. I think it's unbelievable in nearly every way. Big Kubrick fan.
Do you? I mean, we both love movies, and it's kind of, of course people love movies, but I think you especially think very deeply about movies and the meanings and the people behind them and why they're making them. And I think it's very much a lost, not only art form in the making of it, but lost art form in the consuming of it. Like, how do you think about movies as you're watching?
Well, I think the Chinese market has ruined the modern movie, because we have what a movie can do, what a true film can do, is take the written word and put you in it visually. And if it's done well with all these things that we're talking about, lighting and how you shoot, the lens choices you make, how you block a scene, you're either bringing, the Coens are a master of this. A lot of dialogue is shot over the shoulder, but the Coens often, they place the camera within the conversation, so you're really part of it. And that's what a good film does, is it places you within the written word, right? It makes it come alive. And that's a very cultural, relational kind of thing. The mega movies, the movies that define cultures, we've talked about Star Wars. That was a zeitgeist kind of thing, right? And with the opening of the Chinese market and how important that is to modern film in the sense of driving ticket sales, at least until COVID. I still think we're trying to figure out what a post-COVID filmmaking world looks like.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, sorry. That you have to remove that cultural intimacy in order to cross such a divide. And therefore, the zeitgeist movies are cheap and melodramatic rather than truly dramatic. So, for instance, you get superhero movies where all the things that make us human are stripped away, because that's the only thing that can truly transcend these cultural barriers. Good romantic comedies, where have those gone? Well, they don't translate. They just don't translate. And yet, what tells us so much about, and it's easy for guys to make fun of romantic comedies. It's a silly, but they communicate the human condition. How do you relate? There's no one so different as someone of the opposite sex that you are deciding, am I going to live with this person for the rest of my life? Am I going to commit my life to this person? And so the romantic movie. The romantic comedy even can really, Shakespeare, half of his plays were comedies. This is a way to explore what makes us human. And we've lost that. So that's kind of where I think where modern cinema is. Now, that kind of leads us into some of the other things about decoupling from some of that. So hopefully, I would hope we would see a return of interesting film in that way that isn't just the tiny Netflix, we made this for $2 million as a kind of a love project, but we know not very many people are going to watch it. I watched something with Julia Louis-Dreyfus where she's a kind of a writer who's struggling with her next project, and it was a fine little movie. It was artistic and everything, but a ton of people aren't going to watch that. It's not going to help define us as a culture, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. I'd love to see a return of some of that.
Absolutely. No Country for Old Men is just a cinematic masterpiece. At the same time, There Will Be Blood, which would be my number one on my list.
Yeah.
It's right there at the same time.
It's really good.
It's good. And I think that it sounds like we're drawn very similar to movies that it's not only the human condition, but human nature that they reflect in the story accurately.
Yeah.
There Will Be Blood is depressing. Like, it is not something that you look at and go, I want to live like that. But everybody walks out of that movie and go, oh man, that didn't make me feel great. And then they go live their life in the exact same way.
exact same way.
Yeah.
Paul Thomas Anderson's an interesting guy. He's not somebody that I think either you or I would choose to probably hang out with. He made, let's go through some of his movies that are very well made, but difficult watches, especially for Christians. Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood. He did Inherent Vice, which was unbelievable, but a difficult watch as a Christian, based on the Thomas Pynchon novel. And Pynchon is one of those guys who I appreciate and I want to love just because of the brilliance of his writing. And I see Anderson kind of like that, as a guy who is maybe more appreciated than loved, for at least guys coming from a Christian perspective. But man, There Will Be Blood it's
gnarly.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Lewis just hit it out of the park.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, when did he not?
Fair enough.
He's a guy. He's retired now, right?
Retired.
He's
like making shoes or something somewhere. Didn't he retire to go do something really
esoteric?
Yes.
Yeah. He's so good. Method guy. And I don't know. I always laugh at the who played Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings? Ian McKellen, who's another guy. His life choices aren't the ones we would make, but a very talented actor, right? And I remember seeing it's kind of it's been years ago now, but there was a famous little clip of him making fun of the Method guys because they would ask him, Sir Ian, how is it that you can play this wizard? And he says, I pretend that I'm the wizard. So now I'm Ian. And then they say action. Suddenly I'm the wizard.
Suddenly I'm Gandalf.
I'm pretending. And it was just such a slam on the Method guys, right?
To be fair, they're fantastic, but they deserve it a little bit.
The Method. Yeah. Okay, so just for the people who don't know what we're talking about, method acting. I'm a hedge fund guy. Wow, you got me talking about this. Anyway, the method is the idea that I would basically become this character 24/7.
You would go to Starbucks as Gandalf.
Mm-hmm. I think famously Jim Carrey, when he played Man in the Moon or whatever, about the comic who died, whose name is escaping me now, but lived as this guy to the
broke him.
It broke him. That you want to know what happened to Jim Carrey. This deal. Heath Ledger, I think
It was absolutely
was method for Batman, and it drove
lived
him.
as the Joker for
Yes,
however many
the
months.
8-month shoot. Nolan takes his time, I think. So that's method acting. Is this idea that I have to inhabit the character continually until it's like Downey Jr. In Tropic Thunder, who says, "I don't break character until the DVD commentary is done." That is a top 10 movie. If
Oh
you
my
kn-
gosh. I'm
if
just
you-
a dude playing another dude.
dude, it's not a dude play. If you haven't seen the director's cut of Tropic Thunder, if you can still
I
find
haven't.
it, if it hasn't been completely canceled, I had the Blu-ray and I loaned it out to somebody and I haven't got it back. But the director's cut and the commentary of Tropic Thunder is so good. And again, how he did not get the Oscar for that role.
Oh, it was amazing. I'll tell you what we need is more movies and shows from Ben Stiller.
Severance.
Severance is incredible.
And who's that guy? Who's that guy who's writing it? That guy's. I'd never heard of him before.
It's incredible. Came out of nowhere.
I don't want to do this while we're shooting a podcast. I'd look him up, but Stiller is really. So have you seen Walter Mitty?
Yes. Did he direct that?
He did.
Golly. Yeah. No, he's incredibly talented.
And that's a layered piece of storytelling, you know.
Stylistically just excellent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, beautiful.
So I want to bring this to, because mostly dudes watch this, and of course we talk about movies all the time. But like, how do we choose as men what is acceptable to watch as a Christian man? And what is acceptable to consume? And I think that goes beyond just film. I think it goes into kind of all types of art, and take off the table things that are just completely salacious.
Well,
and
I'll just tell you kind of where I just can't watch it. You know, I've gotten to the age where these quote unquote rules or the guidelines of my heart are so ingrained that I just can't really watch it. But obviously, if something, if there is, you know, graphic intercourse, I'm out. I'm either turning away or turning it off, one or the other. And if it's graphic, if it's pornographic, then we're turning it off. Body horror is off limits. I get. And so again, body horror is a term used to describe the celebration of the destruction of the body. So a lot of modern horror is in this category, to where, oh, how's this guy going to get killed? And, oh, did you see his head get ripped off? And all the, you know, so this was some had an objection to the passion of the Christ to this. I do not think that was the purpose of that.
Right.
Some then had Second Commandment issues with it, but others, I think the more thoughtful objection is this body horror, you know, and I don't think so. But that's, I'm out. I have no patience for that. I have no desire. You know, I didn't watch the Saw series. I don't even know if that even played a part. But the fact that it was called Saw, I'm like, I got no interest. Right?
It's disrespectful.
It's disrespectful to the image of God. It becomes this idea that our body and soul, or body, soul, and spirit, if you're tripartite, it is so separated that what you do in the body doesn't matter. And yet that's not how the Bible talks about it, that we're a unified being, body and soul, or body, soul, and spirit. And so doing destruction to the body not mattering, that's a Gnostic idea, that what you do in the Gnosticism, the idea that material world doesn't matter. It's only what's spiritual, as though the two aren't united in the person of Christ. So So anyway, body horror, obvious, anything that approaches pornography or, graphic intercourse, something like that. And then there are explorations of themes that are not Christian and okay. But then I think when if just rabid, chaotic, or destructive behavior is being lauded. That's the theme of the movie or the piece or whatever.
There's a lot of that today.
For instance, some people would say, like we brought up at lunch, the righteous gemstones, and I've only watched an episode or two of that. But some people would say, well, that's a mockery of the church, and okay, if that's your conviction, I think it's a mockery of the people who make excuses for their hypocrisy is really what, I think that's the sandbox that Danny McBride's playing. But let's say it was, if it was truly through and through a mockery of the church, then I'd be out.
Right.
That's not only is it not edifying or beneficial, I have no desire. So that's kind of where my lines are.
Does that extend to books and extend to music and all the just all the arts?
Yeah, I can't, even though some of the rhythms are okay. Most rap music falls into this. I just got no time for it. We've come far away from Bust a Move or
I just can't get the mental picture of you driving down the road listening to.
That hasn't happened, so you don't need to have that mental picture.
Kids, turn down the music.
I'll listen to some, I'm a not so secret Van Halen fan, so.
What was it like growing? I mean, you have grown up just two lovely daughters, done such a great job. They're off at college. Kind of in retrospective, looking back, what are some things that you feel like you did well in that process when it comes to protecting their minds in the art category and like things that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I've thought a lot about
the
this.
consumable of ideas,
Yeah. Well, especially with my first one, although both of them I parented with this approach, is just fill them with so much good that there's not a lot of room for the bad. Mm-hmm. So my oldest was reading before she turned 4. Yeah, and she was reading chapter books in kindergarten. She read all the Nancy Drew books before she started, like every one of them. Before she started
That's incredible,
first grade.
But not normal.
No, it's not normal. But the point is that and we were memorizing Nicene Creed, Apostles' Creed, the history behind it. I have this old illustrated version of the Nicene Creed that has the history on the back page, and I would read that to the point. And you do it every night. We had kind of a liturgy of bedtime,
repetition.
Yeah.
Like doing the same thing over and over again.
And hopefully not vain, but just it's in you. And so we had a series of prayers and songs, and I gave them until they were the age where it wasn't appropriate anymore. My wife stayed at home with the kids, and I'd come home from work and we'd eat dinner, and then I did bath time and bedtime. And we kind of had a liturgy of it, but it was just, we would read a story or two, we had some of the very similar, I'm sure, favorites that a lot of people did, but the ones that I thought, and it's going to sound real whatever, but that where metaphysics weren't the enemy. And what I mean by that is like we read The Velveteen Rabbit and Corduroy, and it wasn't just Goodnight Moon. Not that there's anything wrong with Goodnight Moon, but it was stuff that said that there's more to be seen. There's more to the world than what we can just see, and that there is that love that is eternal and these things that prick our heart. These are the things that I want you to see in the world that are important. And so if you're intentional about that, and first of all, for guys, the biggest deal is just be there and be involved. But when they're young, I think I recommend having this liturgy of, if you're blessed enough where your wife can stay at home, but she's been with the kids all day, then have that time where they're seeing dad who's present and there and pouring into them. It doesn't have to be long. I mean, it took, for both of them to get them bathed and story time and individually put to bed and all the stuff. That was about an hour and 15 minutes. I mean,
you can dedicate that.
Yeah. You're tithing your day, I think that had the biggest impact on the girls. But, the historical parts of our faith what you want to keep them from, and we as evangelicals struggle with this, is tying them to realizing that they are connected to all these believers who've gone back to Christ. And then beyond that, all the Hebrews and the Gentile God-fearers, they're in fellowship with. And so having them see that through, for us, it was reading these, Catherine Voss, I believe, the Children's Story Bible, very, very good, very good. And then reciting the Nicene Creed. Oh, wow. So when we went to, our housekeeper got married in this little Catholic church. Very traditional Catholic church. But when it came to the Nicene Creed and the recitation of the Nicene Creed, and then when the Mass came and the Sursum Corda, lift up your hearts, all these things, they were like, oh.
They related to him.
They related. And not that we might not have some valid disagreements with certain things, but they saw that they were tied in common belief that there is a king, a salvific king, and we worship, and we're tied through history together with all that. I think that's important. I'm not trying to be long-winded on this. I'm pretty good at being long-winded, but
this is one of the more important things, guys.
This parenting, this deal that you just, I gave up intentionally some real career opportunity that I was just going to be home with my kids every night. We were going to eat around the table, and then we were going to do this deal. And then I ended up, I coached both kids in soccer. I played soccer as a kid, and then I played on a club team. I played a little bit of baseball in college. And while I was playing baseball, I played soccer to stay, to be fit. And I always loved soccer, even though I didn't play it in high school. I played football and baseball, but I decided, I got asked by a friend when the kids were enrolling in, they went to Covenant School, Christian school here in Dallas. And another dad said, hey, we're going to try to start a soccer program for the school, and we're going to try to start them young. So by the time these kindergartners go into high school, maybe we're making the playoffs and so on and so forth. So me and another guy, we coached our kids through, and then eventually my kids ended up playing club, and his daughter did too, and all the stuff. And sure enough, by that graduating class at Covenant won. So by the time the girls were sophomores through seniors, I think they won 2 or 3 state championships.
Did they really?
Yeah. And then my daughter, who ended up going to Ursuline Academy, won the state championship at her school. And then my younger one ended up going and playing soccer. She's at UT as a soccer player right now. So, and hey, I was a decent athlete. My wife was a great athlete, marathoner, synchronized swimmer. And I'll tell you what, I can poke fun at that sport, but athletic, it
takes a lot.
Oh my gosh.
It takes a lot.
My wife's endurance, I can't even approach. So the kids,
every guy's been in a pool and no one's around, and they're like, this can't be that hard. You start trying to, it's hard.
Oh, there's a name for what my wife, they would have to do this scissor kick propeller thing with their hands. and keep their head above water while being perfectly vertical for like an hour.
And they will
at a time.
Will launch other people out of the water.
No, it's insane. And so my wife was, I think they won the Pennsylvania games, her synchronized swimming team. Anyway, point being is my kids did have some athletic, there were some decent genes, but it was just being involved with them. They were able to go, do these things, and then making sure they were in church. I mean, if I could do it all over again, I would try to play. There were times we missed church on Sunday because we had a tournament or something going on. And I probably could have done that better. I think I did it a little bit better with my second. So, you gotta figure that stuff out.
What did the nuggets along the way look like? Like, were there any attaboys that God would give you glimpses into, like, hey, this is working. Like, keep doing this. Were those moments, or were they just kind of mixed up in all the other moments that were happening? Or do you remember specific times?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So with my oldest, I remember we would go on at least one daddy date a week. So one night of the week, and this is before my youngest was born. So they're 3 years and 3 months apart. And we would go, and I would take her to like CPK or something. But I remember she said, okay, I'm going to pray, Daddy. And she launched into this prayer that would have made John Owen proud. I mean, it was like this pure, anyway. And the waitress, I remember, was just blown away. How old is your daughter? She goes, I want her to preach to me. Anyway, it was funny. But then she was just very kind-hearted as well to her classmates, and she loved people. And so she didn't have that, sometimes when you have a devout kid, they can get pretty self-righteous. Mm-hmm. It's just part of immaturity. Yeah. And she wasn't like that. She was really, very grounded on all that. With my second one, I remember she had this digital camera that my wife and I had, and we found she had made some movies with it, or maybe it was an old phone. I don't remember. But I remember looking through, and I mean, she was 5, so it wasn't like I was betraying some great confidence, but she made this long video about how she had this. She goes, okay, so Jesus says we are to have a prayer closet. So she had she had taken this cork board from my office and put all these people and their pictures on it with pens. She's 5 years old, and made an entire prayer list and keeping up with how they were doing. And she had made a video, and she said, in case something were to happen to me, I want there to be records so people know why I have their names and pictures on this prayer. And she kept it hidden. This isn't for anybody else to know, so I wouldn't be prideful. And I'm like, that's way beyond any kind of personal pietism of this guy. I don't have a prayer wall in my closet, so yeah, those were two really big. I'm like, Lord God, you are large and in charge. You are working miracles in these kids' hearts.
My kids still ask when your daughter's going to come back and babysit.
Oh, this summer when they're home. Zoe'd love to see them.
She's moved on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I
love it.
But anyway, to put a bow on it, I think the biggest part is just being present. Loving your wife, making sure when you screw up that you're the first to say you're sorry. Not in a cheesy way, but we're sinners. We're going to screw up. Yeah. Tell your kids, hey, you know what? Because they'll drive you crazy. I don't care how good they are. And by the way, my kids aren't perfect. I'm not. But when they drive you crazy and you get mad and you discipline out of anger instead of out of what's best for them, tell them. They need to see that, I think that's part of, and then when you say something flippant to your wife, so tell them.
That never happens.
Well, I know it doesn't. I know this is hypothetical for everyone who's watching this, but me, when or she says something that hurts your feelings and you get all pouty, go tell your kids. They'll take it in as they understand. Just say, you know what? I was kind of a smart aleck with mama, or whatever it is.
Don't give bad seeds time to grow.
Ooh, yeah. See, I could have just said that.
I mean, keep going, man. Like, these are just things that I can graft onto my life. This is awesome. So what are some other practical things?
I think you kind of figure most of this stuff out when by the time they're getting in the car and driving out the driveway to drive to college.
Yeah. It's like, okay, now we're ready.
Exactly.
Bye.
I mean, if I could go back and encourage, I remember, so my youngest had real bad reflux, real bad. The valve or something in her stomach couldn't keep the acid from going up. So she cried all the time. I think one of the reasons she's so smart is she was just driving all that oxygen to that growing brain. But she cried all the time. And so on the weekends, it was my time to stay up with the kiddo when she wasn't, breastfeeding or whatever. And I remember, being despondent, like, poor kiddo, why are you? We had a certain way we could hold her. I mean, she was tiny, but we could hold her that would take the pressure off of her esophagus and she could stop crying. But I remember my shoulders, I would do it for so long that my shoulders were burning. I couldn't do it anymore. And she'd start crying. I'm going to tear up. And I just remember being like, I can't do this, And I would, give body parts to just have one of those days back. So just don't let them go. Don't let them get away from you without being appreciative of even. It's like in The Hiding Place when they had to pray to God, thanks for the lice. There's going to be times where you're like, I can't. Or as a guy, there's times when you're married to this alien, this woman who's got different plumbing and different personality and you're like, I can't do this. Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can. And don't let it pass you by, because those are the moments where you're going to grow up. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Those moments don't ever quit. I'm 58 and I'm still having just as many of those moments as I did. They're different. Hopefully they're more mature issues, hopefully. But don't discount what God's doing to you in the midst of that. I know it's Everest and you're freezing and you can barely breathe, but man, get to that summit.
How has fatherhood changed now that they're off to school?
Well, your goal should be to work yourself out of a job. You really, really need to be cognizant of that. You are, and you need to realize by about the time they're 7, you're done with their basic personality. Mm-hmm. The dad starts his parenting by when they, really start putting 2 and 3 words together. Before that, I'm just telling you, it's mostly mom. You're there. You can hold the baby. You can do all this. You can help with bath. You can change your diapers, all that stuff. But the dad comes along about the time they start, and what your deal is mom is providing. And again, there's overlap of roles, mm-hmm. but mom is this is safe. This is nurturing. This is where, and dad is helping shape that early personality, that early what's important by the structure and the present care. You're putting into them how they're going to view God, the Father. But by about the time they're 7, that basic personality stuff is done. And that's not just me talking, that's the literature and everything. And then you're helping them be an independent moral agent that how do I structure the understanding of right and wrong? That's from about 6.5, 7 or so till 13. And then even that part's done. By the time they get in middle school, middle part of, they're being more impacted by their friends than they are by you. That's just reality.
Could you see that transition?
Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And you got to be really careful because there are certain unintended consequences of just all kinds of, make sure they're eating healthy, they're getting plenty to eat, that they're not over, so much because of these things, so much is here. You got to make sure that they're interacting with the world and with you and just don't, anyway. But the point is by 13 that from, the basic personality is this chunk. And then this understanding of what it means to be a moral agent in God's world is this next chunk. And you're about done by 12, 13. And they will figure out that they're sinners, and you've got to be okay with that. You can't keep them from sinning. You can hopefully keep the sin from manifesting into something huge and big, but I'm talking about inside here. You can, in other words, you don't want them to be 40-year-olds who, when they go in the pool, put their swimmies on. No, there's some sink or swim going on here.
Freedom to fail.
And it's hard, especially for moms. But they've got to see that bad decisions equal, there are consequences to that. And you want them to do this in this window because the stakes are so much lower than in this window out here. But anyway, that's that period. But and then the rest of the time until they leave home, you're just basically, you're the bank. The bank has a lot of power. And you're setting limits. But you're all these things that you finally have figured out, this stuff, so you want to continue doing it. You're preparing them for exit. And and I think this is the time period where the fork in the road for boys and girls is manifest. And you got to be cognizant of that. So you can't raise, if your first was a daughter, you can't raise your boy once they hit puberty or even in that approaching puberty time. That's a different deal. And same way with girls. I mean, I had 2 girls, but I was a guy and I had a brother. If I had anyway, those paths diverge. But you're not going to control them in this deal. I mean, the more you control them, the more you're just pushing the stuff they're supposed to be learning in here out. Now, again, good limits. They need to be going to church with you. They need to be not, as much as you can keep them from, they don't need to be getting away with a bunch of lying, even though they will lie to you because it works. And so just get right with that.
Oh yeah, they start that when they're 2.
But the point isn't to create this eternal dependence on you. The point is to create an eternal dependence upon God. And parents often want to do the former because it makes you feel good. And hey, it's easy for me to talk. My kids are at school and they both call me every day. I mean, my oldest is in Miami this weekend. Probably won't hear from her, but I might. She was texting me pictures of her dinner last night. But if you want that, what is a blessing to me, that I have a great relationship. My wife has a great relationship with our kids. They know that they are adults now. even the youngest one, she's 18, about to be, she's, or 19. 19 now, 19 and 22. And I pay for school, and I give them a little allowance, but they work. My youngest, is soccer, which is like a full-time job. That pays for her meals and pays part of her schooling and all this. My oldest has a 3-day a week, 8 to 5 job. She runs a fulfillment center. I mean, literally runs all the supply chain dynamics for a fulfillment center before she's even graduated. She would never be able to have that type of agency if I had overbearingly, And by the way, when you do pull back a little bit, you're not pulling back in love, but when you realize you can't parent the way they're here, they're gonna explore some areas that you don't like. And I mean, hopefully nothing destructive or anything, but it's hard, man. It'll get you on your knees,
Was there ever a moment where they were going down a wrong path and you held yourself from intervening because you knew it would be better for them in the long run for them to experience that pain, knowing that it wouldn't be ultimately destructive?
Yeah. I mean, I had to learn through it. I remember one of my daughters, I don't want to get into details, but we had a situation where, we had a disagreement, and I left parents' weekend early with my wife. I said, hey, we're getting in the car. We need to go. And realizing in the midst of it, once I got home, that I was being manipulative. I really was. And she, and I had to make a really hard, long phone call and tell her, you're going to do what you're going to do and learn what you're going to learn. And I'm there for you if you get hurt or in need or in trouble. But these issues that were going on there, they weren't moral issues. They were wisdom issues. How else is she going to learn wisdom? How else am I going to learn wisdom unless you have to go through these things? Wisdom is tacit. It's tacit knowledge to a large degree. And so, and that was painful, but I had to pull back. And then, so again, none of us do it perfectly, but I think parenting that's the hardest part for Christians. They want to be the Holy Spirit and the Father and the Son to these kids beyond it, past the point where you're supposed to be turning their hearts and gaze and eyes to, I don't care who you are watching this or listening to this, you're going to do a worse job than God, who loves your kids way more than you do. It just does. And I think part of it's just pride, God can't love my kids more than I do. Yeah. That'd be fun for God to show you a little,
the receipts.
A little picture book of the times you failed your kids. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
That's a book I do not want to flip through.
Oh, can you imagine? When you were going through the last 22 years as your oldest?
Yeah.
Were there guys a step ahead of you that you were kind of drafting on and following and seeing how they did things and how they raised their kids? Let them make the mistakes.
Well, I'm the oldest of all the cousins that I have. I'm the oldest on both sides.
So am I.
And I had, divorced parents and from a young age. And so no, what I learned was from listening to a lot of guys who had gone before me, but they weren't around me and personal. So I screwed up some, I had to have my wife. By the way, I didn't come up with this nighttime liturgy that wasn't just from the well springs of my wise and good heart. Jody, I remember, I can kind of remember coming home and putting my feet up and like cracking open a beer when she's like feeding and washing
just in the
kids
middle,
of the band.
just in the middle of the war.
In the war, after she'd been home with this, 6-month-old.
Hey, keep it down in there.
Yeah, what are y'all doing? Something like that. That might not be the exact deal, but I remember her going to bed, and I mean, my wife is a very tough woman, but she's very tenderhearted as well, and she's just saying, I think it'd be good if you were involved with some of this stuff, and I had to get there. And then once you do, you're like, I remember. So when they turned 8, I was like, I can't do the bath time anymore. You're into that next stage of development, and it's not appropriate for daddy to, and that was painful. Not because anything. It was just I wanted.
It was time.
You want it to continue, but it's time, and they got to grow up. Look. I'm glad both my girls go to UT, not because, UT's a really good school, but it's got its problems and everything. I just like it that it's in Texas, and they're like, if they meet somebody, then hopefully it'll be here. You want them to be close and all these things. But you got no control over that. And you got to hold all that stuff loosely. Otherwise, you turn into kind of a tyrant. I've done that with my wife. I'm not, I was probably I was so, not to get too personal, but I was so hurt by my folks divorcing that I had a pretty clear picture of what I wanted to be as a dad. Be involved and be present and coach all the stuff and do all the things. But I didn't have a very good picture in my head of what marriage looked like. My granddad had a big part in raising me, but he was born in 1903, and he and my grandmother were, 80 years old when I was a little kid, So I really screwed up with my wife. I'm probably a lot better parent than I was a husband at times.
Yeah, when we went to dinner, gosh, how long ago was that? You, me, Allison, and Jody. 4 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
Yeah.
We left that dinner and sat in the car, and I remember this I still remember this. Like, golly, Ron and Jody treat each other like they were married last week. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah.
How do we emulate that?
Well, first of all, realize, I got a lot to ask forgiveness for. I asked, I told Jody I was sorry this morning I just came to a realization. We were talking about some stuff and how I process out loud. And I do that with my wife. And if that is hard on her because she's riding this roller coaster. Like, I'll come home, and I manage money, and I got a trade that's going not real fun right now. I think it's going to be fine in the long run, and I'll just process that out loud, and she's having to live through that. And if she, there's been times in the past where if she isn't on board with going through all that, I'll get my feelings hurt or, and, it's easy for a guy, if you're successful, to get your strokes elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And that can go into a bad place quick before you know it. Just trust me, that can get bad quick. So you got to really, really guard your heart. And there's been times where I have been more than lax in that. And so the deal about Jody and I, we are close, probably closer than ever now. She really is a dear, dear friend, but I got to remind myself that she's my wife, and there's a distinction there. Sometimes we so level the playing field between husband and wife, we forget that there is a difference in level of duty. You know, I love my wife not out of duty, but there are certain ways I'm supposed to treat her that are duty bound, because it's like Christ and the church, right? If Jesus treated the church the way we often treat our wives, the church would have ceased to exist a long time ago, right? And that's not a guilt trip on guys. That's not my point. My point is that being best friends with your wife is good. I want to talk to my wife before I want to talk to anybody else. But then I have to also understand that she's not just like me. And I married her because she's not just like me. She's not a dude. Thank goodness, right?
Yes.
That would be a problem.
Grateful.
I mean, that's probably part of the problem of the modern understanding of reality is all those distinctions being erased. So what's wrong with being gay, right? What's wrong with being trans? And well, there's a big problem because it's anti-creational. Those differences drive. So I'm attracted to Jody because she's different, but I have to remind myself that she's different. And I also have to remember that while Jesus and the Trinity is limited by the very being of their character, I'm fallen, so I can't rely on that. I have to remember there's that wisdom, this tacit knowledge of right and wrong, to limit my, I don't go hire some hot secretary. That sounds very basic, but just don't put yourself in a stupid situation.
Yeah.
Don't be.
And it's easier than you think.
There's so easy.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I'm a Christian guy. Was it nothing, and then don't be spending an inordinate amount of time where you just don't need to be, wherever it is, online or elsewhere. There's just certain, and this is all basic stuff, but it's easy to forget the basics when life gets complicated. And then, what if your wife just has a string of bad days? Have you ever had a string of bad days? And you hope she'd be gracious with you, right? Again, and I'm speaking, this is from experience, the most, for the single guys out there, realize the more outstanding, and every person is unique. I'm going to sound like a snowflake talk here, but every person is unique. But if you're attracted to somebody who like my wife is very type A, kind of like we had a lot of that in commonality. She ran an entire division of a hospital she was in before we got married in a very technical field. She probably would have made a very good doctor, but the point is if you're attracted to that kind of thing, as opposed to somebody, pardon me, who's a little more mousy, say, which is what I was. I could never go out with the, yes, Ron, whatever you say. That would just drove me crazy.
Just be a feedback loop.
Oh, gosh. But if you're attracted to that, then realize that there's going to be tensions that you're going to need to deal with later on, that it's your job to deal with. It's not her job. You're the one who got down on one knee and asked. She didn't ask you. I mean, and I would assume in all the cases here, Christian guys, devout Christian guys. So just be cognizant of all that, of all that. I just want to. I say this because marriage is messy, and we can either choose to be a sponge or Teflon to that mess. And believe it or not, you want to be the sponge. And by that, I mean, you want to soak up, you need to be that. I mean, do you know the stuff that Jesus has to hear from us with no perspective? She's not your, and with grace and patience, he hears us. You just got to remember, to be Christ-like is That's an all-encompassing thing. So, very long story short, point being is I was probably a better dad than I'm figuring out now. Now that the kids are gone, I'm catching up, hopefully, on the husbanding part. But my wife has made it very easy. And by that I mean she is very steadfast, very much a woman of prayer, very moral, and the most loyal person I've ever known. And so when I'm spazzing out, in my type A weird, whatever, there's been times where she has unfairly had to be kind of the guy role where, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
And that's unfair. So be aware of that, men, when you're figuring this stuff out.
Yeah. That's hard for them. They're not designed that way.
No, they're not. You can force them into some stuff, and then you get existential crisis. It usually happens about the time of menopause, and they really don't have the hormonal makeup to be able to deal with that existential crisis at that point. So if you're forcing them to be Jesus when their job is to be the church, you are biting off you're doing real psychological and harm there. And it may end up working out, but there's a real chance of screwing up a good thing or really setting yourself back in that way.
Do you pray for your daughter's future spouses?
I do. And it's hard because, I think, again, that pride thing, nobody's going to love them the way I do. It's funny. My oldest is dating a guy. It's almost 2 years now. We're getting close. And he relates to her in certain ways and provides a safe place for her better than I do at times. And that's humbling. But it's kind of cool too. That's what you want, right? And so I just pray that they'll always remember to look to Jesus first. Guys in college, that's a tough ask sometimes because they're guys in college, especially if you're very driven. Not everybody, guys mature slower than women. Sorry, guys.
You don't say.
So anyway, I pray for him, and my youngest is currently not in a relationship, and I pray for whoever that may be, just that they would be guys who love the Lord and know that that's where their chief loyalty is.
Where should young guys, especially single, be looking for other men as mentors, examples? Follow me as I follow Christ. Well, obviously, it's the church.
Yeah, it should be the church. It's often not. Our churches have become so consumer based. I think that's the job of your generation is, can you win that back and make churches true communities? I know that, I know Todd offices up here, and that's been his passion. His entire ecclesiastical career is creating true community. And, his emphasis with this Todd Wagner, who's for folks who aren't aware, who was, kind of founded and with some other people and was with Watermark for a long time. But that was, we would talk back before all that happened when we were both at Northwest together. We would talk a lot about that. How do you do that? Me, I'm a Presbyterian. I had to accept John Calvin into my heart, and how do you build community without the community becoming a thing in and of itself that gets real tribal?
Yeah,
I think that's hard, to where it kind of subsumes some of the familial independence. It's hard. And then on the other deal, you get just churches where, you just go and get your God fix.
Mm-hmm. It's a drug.
And it's a, I think there's probably a healthy balance to where you're in that soup, and the soup would be missing an important flavor if you're not there, but it's not completely and utterly dependent upon you. I don't know. I don't have it figured out. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. I think it's where, I think Catholics have, with all of their parachurch fraternal organizations, have kind of done a better job historically than we have. Knights of Columbus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Heck, the Masonic Lodge was that for a lot of people, even though it's probably, there's questions of heresy and all that kind of thing.
Shriners.
But here's an organization built around helping kids, and that also provides a fraternal link. In Dallas, Salesmanship Club is a big fraternity. It's kind of, it's fraternity. I'll stop. I love the Salesmanship Club. I actually used to play in the house band for the Salesmanship Club, the Haywoods. We were the Salesmanship Club. This is a true story. Salesmanship Club runs the Byron Nelson golf tournament every week, administrates it. And my band, the band I was in right before I got married, the Haywoods, we were the Byron Nelson band in the back when they had the big pavilion, the tent.
Oh yes.
And we would play for an hour and a half to 5,000 to 6,000 well-oiled people.
Oh my gosh.
And it was unbelievable.
Apparently the Byron Nelson's totally changed personality since back then.
I got invited to go this, I don't care that much. I mean, it's great. But I don't, give me a guitar, put me in a band, I'll go play for somebody, but I don't know. I'll watch it on TV maybe a little bit. I mean, I am excited about watching the Masters on Sunday. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Go Scotty.
I think he's in second right now.
That's what Newman just told us.
Yeah, it's on the TV, but it's facing that direction. So
sadly,
I can't tell right now.
Well, we're not distracted.
Ron, it is always a pleasure to sit down with you.
Oh, well, thank you, Brian.
And anything else you want to say? Any just sparks of
wisdom
that are going on? We could go all day.
I hope this wasn't too much of a personal, vomit deal, but I think guys need to know that the people, I'm older and have been through it, that you don't ever get it completely figured out. And so hopefully you are living in community with guys you respect who will tell you get over yourself when you're pouty about something about your wife, and who will encourage you to love and good deeds. Hopefully your wives have solid groups of friends who aren't perfect. You'll never think that they're, again, women are different. They're supposed to be, but hopefully they have a solid group of friends who love Jesus and pray for each other, so that, because that support system outside the husband and wife dynamic is incredibly important. Let the older women teach the younger women how to love their husbands. That's not Ron. That's not a cross stitch. That's Bible. So that is hugely important. But don't think that older guys have it all figured out. We don't. We're getting humbled every day. We just, have new sets of stuff to figure out.
A good friend of mine, I hope it didn't reveal too much, but his doctoral thesis is going to be on rugged individualism in men and how so many men have just completely abandoned the idea of community in I'm going to go do it myself. I do not need an ecosystem. I do not need dependence on other people in my life, and I do not need to be told what to do.
Right.
And how just prevalent it is, especially among Christian men. Well,
it's a siren song that's very attractive because you don't have to report to anybody. Mm-hmm. You'll be dashed upon the rocks of that deal. You know, how many guys, you know, I know some super successful guys who've built these amazing, very well-to-do businesses and who are great, but they would be the first to tell you that there were times where the community would have steered them out of a ditch or two.
Ron, thank you, sir.
You bet, buddy.
Until next time.